all right there. Just the smell of salt water that's in the air. And the sunrise. She's walking on water. She's walking on water. Imagine waking up not knowing if today is your last one. Tell me what would you say if you had some? Somebody tell you that you're young but you're dying, which is weird cause you feel so alive. And she has a dream to be queen of the ocean. Mad emotion, showing her devotion. On her surfboard, fully in motion. Hoping for a miracle when the eyes burst open. She wakes up and picks up a surfboard. Heads out from the seashore. From the water where she lives. She's got no fears or worries at all right there. Just the smell of salt water that's in the air. And the sunrise. She's walking on water. She's walking on water. Face up, toes in the sand. Surfer girl gave up, trying to understand. Soon get to living on the same die. She's tired of goodbyes cause they make her cry. Looking in the sky, blue as her eyes, watching the rising of the sun. Well, how time flies when you're outside and you're in love and you're having fun. Remember the early days when she was laying down on the sand with the fam, and she had a plan, bam, to wake up after daylight. Watch her eyes like the sun on the run from the night. Feels so alive when she wakes up and takes up a surfboard. Heads out from the seashore. From the water where she lives. She's got no fears or worries at all right there. Just the smell of salt water that's in the air. And the sunrise. From the water where she lives. From the water where she lives. From the water where she lives.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Preserve Navarre Live. I'm your host, Wes Seiler, and I'm joined tonight by my good friend, Nancy Forrester, who is our vice president. Welcome to the show, Nancy. Glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So happy Thursday. Hope you've had a great week. I know the first thing we got to talk about, we got a lot that we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to get into Preserve Navarre and where we came from and how Nancy and I started it. But we got to talk Christmas first. So I have to know first what you did. What are your traditions? How did you celebrate Christmas in Florida?
Actually, this year we kind of did nothing.
Yeah.
I had just visited some family in California, so I had a lot of the family visits out of the way. But it was such a beautiful, beautiful day. We went for a very short walk. We sat on the porch with some warm cider. And,
yeah.
Just relaxed. We had shrimp from Joe Patty's, so it was just a relaxing time.
That sounds like the best Christmas, because that's exactly what we did. Is we did a whole lot of nothing. My wife said we've had a heck of a year just with everything that we've been through at work, and I was overseas for months.
Yeah.
And so just taking the whole day, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Well, my wife was just like, we'll take a nap, we'll chill, and then we'll cook some food and just relax and enjoy it. So that was a lot of fun. I did get a picture, though, that I'm excited to show you, which is of the sunset. So if you were in Navarre on Christmas Day, this is what we were looking at.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely gorgeous. So I smoked some ribs on my back patio and then cooked those for the family, and we had those. We were playing some board games and stuff. And then my wife's like, "Oh, look at the sunset! It's gorgeous."
Yeah.
And we ran out there and just spent the rest of Christmas
Navarre
Day enjoying it.
has the best
It's beautiful.
sunsets from Thanksgiving to into January that are just more than picture perfect. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, you can see that purple on there. But it's awesome. So let me know if you can hear us live. I think the video played, so we've got that nice little intro video. Hopefully audio's coming through. Let us know, because I can see all the comments that you guys post, we'll be pulling those up throughout the show, especially at the end. So if you've got a thought, a comment, a question for Nancy as we go through this, or myself, we'll be happy to do that. But yeah, I love that photo. So we did that. So for our traditions, we definitely kept it chill as well. We also showed a couple movies to my kids that they hadn't seen before. And this is one of my favorites, which is It's a Wonderful Life.
That's my
you know
favorite
that one.
too.
There you go.
Yes.
I love that movie, and I've been watching it since I was a kid.
Yep,
And yeah, like I absolutely love it. And the thing is, like as I get older, I relate to it in different ways, right? So like when I was a kid, I like related to the beginning part, you know, when he saves the kid from the ice, and then his kids. Now I feel like I'm practically the same age as the guy, right? Like, and so when I see him like fighting for a cause he believes in, and then like trying to save his town and the whole thing, and like focusing on the important things, the relationships that he's built, I love that. So, but your favorite movie too, right?
It is. It is. It expresses how we affect other people's lives, and how other people affect our lives.
Yes.
If you took a person out anywhere, like our whole life could be different.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
so.
Absolutely. And then the acting in it is just amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And the writing and the whole thing, it's like, man, they don't always make those that way.
Not anymore.
All right, we got a couple people that jumped in. Mike has jumped in. He said, audio's great, camera looks good. Appreciate that. Chris is on. Hey, Chris, good to see you, man. Welcome to the show. Chris and I have been talking a lot about local politics and everything that's going on, so happy to have you on the show as well. There's another one. So I don't know if you know this one, but my kids love that one. And getting my kids to sit through a full movie, especially one in black and white, like that was an achievement. I don't know if you've seen this one, because I say they don't make them like that anymore, but every now and then you get a good one. And we found this one. It's on Netflix. It's called Klaus.
Okay.
And my wife found it. She was like, you got to show this to the kids. You're going to love it. And it gets into the history of who St. Nicholas was. They've got like a little story about him being this guy. He's a toy maker and the whole thing. And then he's kind of brought out to help bring this village together, and, kind of unites them with what he's built and everything.
Yeah.
It's adorable. So it's a little cartoon movie.
Check it out.
Yeah, but my kids love that one. I was like, okay, this is pretty good. So I enjoyed that one a lot. So that's what we did. But I want to get into you, Nancy. So in terms of, I always ask this every time people come on the show is, what first brought you to Navarre? So explain that one to us.
Okay. Actually, back in probably 1991, I went to Fort Walton Beach with my husband on Okaloosa Island for vacation, and discovered the white sand. I've always collected sand from wherever I went vacation.
Yeah.
And saw this white sand, and just, we both just fell in love with that. So the plan was then in 2000 we were going to retire and come down here and find a home or property, either one. We did, and we had kind of planned on being on the Chattahoochee Bay.
Yep.
We went there, didn't have, wherever we went, if like we found the house, we didn't like the property, and vice versa. If we found the property, we didn't like the house. So we started spreading out a little bit more, going on into Destin, over to that mid-bay over there, coming over here, Gulf Breeze, all the way.
Yep.
And finally we found this one house in Navarre that was on the Sound.
Yep.
And so walked in, and there was like 2 or 3 things. It was just like, that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so came down immediately after we retired. The day after my husband retired, we were in the car on the way down.
Yeah.
So we've always loved Navarre for several reasons. We like the 3 seasons.
Yes.
It's not winter. We don't have that. But you don't have the hot from down further south.
You get the cool and the pretty sunsets like we're talking about.
I like wearing jeans and a sweatshirt.
So my wife is from New Hampshire, up close to Boston. And so anytime we want snow, we just take a trip up there. We get a week of that, and then cool, we go down the hills and stuff. We do the little snow tubes.
The kids would love it.
And and then we're good. And then we can come back to Florida where, the temperature is good and sane and normal, and people can live, right?
I'm happy looking
get your
at the
fix
snow
elsewhere.
on TV.
Yes, exactly.
Really.
Exactly. So where were you from originally? Because I've got this picture. I got to show this. So I love this picture. And just so you guys know, if you watched last week, I got to make fun of Jersey Jerry for a minute because this picture I didn't have to color. So his, I had to do a little work on it, but yours, it came this way. So this is adorable. It looks just like my daughter, honestly. It's a great picture. So tell me more about where you grew up and all that.
It was actually Pontiac, Michigan, the town where they made the Pontiac cars.
Yep.
My dad worked at the Pontiac factories. Grew up there, graduated there, went to college there.
That's where you got your fill of snow, right?
Yeah, really. Part of the time that I was working was actually even down towards Southfield and Detroit, and it would take maybe 2 hours in the snow to drive down there, and we just counted days till we could come down here.
Yes.
So we are very happy with the weather. We liked the small town feeling.
Yep.
We liked the beach culture.
Yep.
We liked meeting people from other places. That was a neat thing for us too.
Yep.
There were people from all over, people from Texas and my best friend from Ohio.
Yeah.
Just it's great to meet people from I thought from other areas and get their perspective on things and mixture of cultures. That's what our country is.
It sounds very similar to my wife because I'm a Southern boy. I was raised in the South. I knew all about this area of the Panhandle. We came down here every year. But Catherine, my wife, she didn't know about this at all, and so she knew very little about the South. Had only spent a few days in it, and so when I was trying to sell her on moving here, I was like, okay. I was trying to undersell it, like, we'll just check out this other place. And then we come across 87 and we see, like the bridge and everything when we get on 98. And she was like, oh, wow. And I'm like, oh, this is just Navarre. It's a place. People live here. And then I waited. I gave her a couple of days. We went to Scooters. We spent some time on the beach. We showed our kids around. I was like, we could live here too, And she was like, I love this, right?
Yeah.
So... very similar story of like you start out as a tourist and you end up as a local by the end of it. Yeah. I love that. That's great. So let's get into what you love about Navarre, because that's my second question. It's always what brought you here, and then what do you love most about it? We'll come back to this picture because we got to talk about that one. Okay. But talk to me about some of the causes that you've been a part of and what you found in love with around here.
That was one thing I really loved about this area, and just the fact that I was finally retired. And I volunteered at the zoo. I volunteered at the wildlife refuge. I was in the garden club planting trees. And oh gosh, so many others. I was a queen of a red hat group. We had like 30-some people in it. Just so many nice people. Nice people that were my age and younger. I think half my friends were younger. Even. But it just, so much to do. Collecting seashells. I still love it.
I remember the first day my kids saw dolphins, wild dolphins right out there in the ocean and stuff. Absolutely. That's a great picture, though. I love that with the eagle.
That was my dream rescue. I had been with the wildlife rescue for probably about 8 years at that point and had never had an eagle. And my dream was like, someday I got to get an eagle, and got the call. And I was just thrilled. So I had some people standing by take a picture of me because I had to.
So what do you do with the eagle at this point? Because it's very big. And it's an eagle, so.
You have to be really, really careful. You'll notice in that picture I have gloves on. Okay. Their talons are extremely sharp.
I fish, so like I've never done anything like when you catch a big fish, you're probably going to turn it back in, right? Like you hook a shark, you're done, right? So that's my reference point. But keep going.
You have to be careful of the beak and careful of the talons.
Okay.
So you got to keep them away from your face, away from here. So that's why I'm holding him down like this. And we had a large carrier then that I put him in and put the top on, and put that in the car, and then took him to the refuge.
Awesome. Okay.
But, that was cool.
And then I got one more here. Okay, you're going to have to explain again to me and the bird what's happening because he looks pretty intimidating at this point.
Because of his beak. They have some pretty good-sized beaks. That's an osprey.
Okay.
And I captured him on the bay, off of East Bay Road. And he had actually gotten tangled into some telephone wires.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
And so he had come down. I think he still had a wire near him or on his talon or
Oh,
something.
I see.
So had nets, nice big nets that you can catch and try to hold him to.
Wow.
Mainly, you don't want to stress him.
Okay.
Sometimes we would have blankets. I don't think we did in this instance, but got a hold of him, and there again, you want to take care of the talons. You want to take care of the beak.
Yeah.
And so if you can hold them, and then have them low.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so let's go back to that other picture too, because you've continued to travel, right? Like, tell me about this picture. I'm very interested. This is Africa, right?
It is Africa. I went to Africa twice with my good friend Jean.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a lover of animals.
Yeah.
If you ever want to see animals in their habitat, it's not a zoo. It takes you a while to realize you are not in a zoo.
I know exactly what you mean.
This was a Maasai chief. We went to his village and saw all of their homes. Mud huts that the women build, the chimney through the top.
Can you tell me what country? Are you allowed to tell me?
Yes,
okay.
yes. No, that was Kenya. It was
near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, that was Kenya. At one point, I think we were at the border with Tanzania, and I had one foot in Tanzania and one foot in Kenya.
So I've spent plenty of time in Kenya, and I love how like the monkeys will come right up to you and stuff like that. You gotta hold on to
Steal your food. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you feel like you're in the Lion King. You're like you're living it every day.
I love it. It
Kenya's
was
gorgeous.
The best trip I've ever been on.
Awesome.
I would
Very
go back in
cool.
a second.
All right. Yeah. So, good with animals, good with people. I got a couple more photos. Who are these fine ladies?
These are the members of the Sassy Scarlet O'Hatters of Navarre. And we don't exist anymore as the complete group.
Okay.
We had kind of some breakup in the COVID time.
Okay.
But we had 32 members, and the Red Hat group's purpose is to go to lunch, laugh, and eat dessert first.
It sounds very similar. Dessert first. Very similar to the Pirates. So I just had Jersey Jerry last week talking about the Pirates and the rowdy group that they are, and then we got another one right here of just kind of having a good time.
We had 5 Red Hat groups in Navarre at one point.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I think there's only one now.
Awesome. Okay,
but they're wonderful.
Yeah, so it's definitely something you probably want to keep building back up, right? Yeah. Like, sounds like a lot of fun.
And I was the queen.
Yeah.
And I'm eating dessert first.
Yeah.
We always have to do that.
So I think this goes kind of, you talked about, you love the people in Navarre. And that's the same thing for me. Is like the culture is really what.
Yeah.
How it's a mix. You've got the beach culture, right? The beach vibes. You've got the Southern culture, which I love, being a Southern boy. You've got the military aspect of it. You've got a lot of retirees come here. I mean, and then like we talked about all the other things that you can get involved into, all the different nonprofits and stuff like that. There's very much a vibrant culture in Navarre to jump into, and that's one of the best parts of it.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about how we met, because I want to kind of get into the history of the group. So I believe it was about 3.5 years ago when I first met you, maybe closer to 3 years, back in 2020. And I remember running into you at one of the festivals. So there's all these festivals in Navarre. If you haven't been a part of them, they're over there at Pickett's has one. They're a lot of times over there near the hotels, they'll have them. Obviously, you've got the Mardi Gras parade is a big one. I remember running into you in one of those off of 98. And then you started telling me about incorporation and how much Navarre needed it. At that point, I had been in here for probably about 4 years, and I didn't know much about it. But do you remember that? You remember?
I do very clearly, and you seemed enthusiastic about everything I was telling you. And I remember at the time we were required to do petitions, and I was trying to get signatures, and I needed help, and you were excited about it. And I said, "Would you like to volunteer?" And you said, "Yeah."
Yeah, sure.
So I was so excited to have another volunteer. But I definitely remember that.
Yeah,
and
it was
I was
fun.
very thankful.
So we had been here for, like I said, about 3.5 years, and at that point we're starting to make the decision to stay. So wife is the boss, and I was like, let's give it a few years, honey. Let's figure out if Navarre is really what I think it is, if it's the place to be, if you like it. And she had just started working at a church down the street called Community Life. She was working there, and she had just gotten into like full-time work and was really picking up and enjoying it. And so she's like, I think this is our forever home. And at that point, I became less of a transient, right? Because you get the tourist, You got the
Right.
true locals who've been here, for all generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the transients, especially the military folks who were here for 2 or 3 years. We could be going to D.C. or could be going to Europe or Korea, wherever, right?
Right.
At that point, I could have been one of those transient people, but we were starting to lean more on stay. And so I was so excited to get involved with something that mattered in the community.
Yeah.
And I'd fallen in love with the culture. I'd started to see some of those nonprofits and wildlife refuge and all that stuff. So I met you then, and then at that point, we're talking about kind of the history of the incorporation movement, right? And that's something that you've been a part of, and that's where I started learning from you a lot.
For years.
Yeah.
Actually, there was an effort, I believe, in 2006, and I was not involved in that. I actually remember reading a bit about it in the paper, and
Yeah.
oh, wow. Oh, are we going to do that? Oh, that'll be great. We
Yeah.
should do that. Well, then that kind of faded away. So actually, when 2013 came up, we were the group that was working on it at that point was getting ready for a straw vote in 2014. So I worked hard with them. The straw vote did not pass. It was like we had like 46% versus 54%. It was kind of close.
Yeah.
But, so they're kind of stepped down
Was it
again.
2014? Yeah, I think
that
it was
was
44%. Yeah.
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 And so then a few years later, another person wanted to start it up. So I'm out there raising my hand. I'll help. I believe in it with a passion. And I just wanted to do anything I could do to help.
So what do you think has been the biggest challenge with incorporation efforts as a whole, right? You've seen several of them, so what do you think has been the biggest challenge?
I truly believe that educating everyone is probably the biggest challenge, because some people don't listen to the news. I'm not critical of it. I'm just saying some people don't listen to the news. They don't get on social media. They don't read the newspapers.
Yeah.
It's hard to get that knowledge
the
to
word
every
out.
single house.
Yeah, that's where you're doing the petitions. I remember. Yeah. Yeah, a big part of it too is you talked about managing the effort. I remember that is you were talking about how we need to be clear on our finances, how much money we have, report back to the donors, raise money locally.
Transparent.
Yeah, all of that stuff. And that was like music to my ears because that was kind of my background as I had worked in the financial aspects of the military for years at that point. Worked in several nonprofits myself. And I was like, cool, I know how to do that. I know how to report back, and I know how to say, here's how much we have, and here's, make sure we're using it effectively, and try to, use other sources whenever you can, and not put too much strain on the people that donate. All that kind of stuff was like, oh, I can help with that.
Yeah.
I think that's where we started. So
Yeah.
Nancy really helped me in terms of putting together our effort, because it was those conversations that we had going back to 2020 that really kind of taught me a lot. I was like, I just need to listen. I need to learn. I need to see where's the opportunities to take this to the next step, the next level. Yeah. And out of that came the values. And you see, I posted them right here. It might be a little hard to read from what we're seeing. But we talked about, okay, what do we need to move this forward? Because, we're looking at Navarre, we're looking at this culture, and that's really what we're trying to preserve.
Right.
We both love. I had someone ask me the other day, they were asking me, what is Preserve Navarre trying to preserve exactly? Like, what is it about Navarre that you want to preserve? And it's that. It's what you and I were just talking about.
Right.
It's the beauty. It's the culture. It's the way of life that is particular to this area.
Feel,
Exactly.
that beachy feel. We are an entirely different culture than all of the other cities or unincorporated areas of Santa Rosa County.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah.
Completely separate.
Yeah, and that's something that's become more clear to me, like living here over the past decade, is just how different Navarre is. So you go down to Gulf Breeze, you go to Fort Walton. Navarre has its own unique history, its own heroes, its own legends, its own history.
Exactly.
And so these were the values that we put together. And then I remember us having that meeting. It was about a year later. We brought all the members together. We said, hey, we want to put together our core values so that people know what we stand for. And this is that list, being resident focused. We're serving the residents. Transparency, you already talked about that.
Yeah.
Responsible growth. We're going to get into that, I think, here in a few minutes. But you've got to grow. All areas do. All people do.
It's
We all
impossible
grow. We
to
all get
not
older.
grow.
It's part of life.
You can't put a wall around Navarre.
You can't stop time. But you can be smart in how you grow. You can do it without losing your culture in the process.
Yeah.
Integrity, constitutional government, and quality of life, right? All important values that we put together for the nonprofit. And I remember doing that, and the whole point of that was to say, okay, let's take what the other efforts did and let's build off of it.
Right.
Let's add a few values to this and focus on those so that we're taking this to the next level. And that's been the fun part of this journey, especially the past couple of years of starting to put those values into practice with you. It's been fun. So let's get into some more of the details with that, because you said it was in the year 2000, right? So this is a few years before, but this is the way Navarre used to be, right? And I hear this from a lot of folks who've been here longer than me. I remember, so 1990. Now I'm going to date myself. I was 5, so we would come down here on vacations to Destin. People didn't even know about Destin at that point. It was like barely a spot on a map, right? It was Panama City was the big one. Yeah. But I remember coming through Navarre several times over the years as I got through middle school and high school and all that stuff. It was a lot different back then. What was it like when you first moved here?
When I first moved here, there was one Winn-Dixie.
Yeah.
That was the only grocery store around.
Yeah.
I think there was one gas station. I actually only really remember one stoplight at 87 and 98.
Right.
In a way, I kind of felt like I was way out in the boondocks at first.
Sure.
It's like I've got to go 25 miles each way, either to Milton or Pensacola or Fort Walton. But that started to grow, and then more things came that I did like. There was an area or a time that particular growth was really good. Yeah. But then in the meantime, over those years, I've been here now going on 24 years, and the growth has not been managed well.
Right.
We cannot stop growth.
Yeah.
We will have growth. You can't stop it. 100 years from now, you're probably going to have 50-story buildings around here.
Right.
We need to manage it wisely.
Right.
And so therefore, we need to have home rule so that we can make our own decisions. The commissioners, everybody says, well, let's get a different commissioner. Well, again, I've been through almost 24 years of that. It just has not worked.
Right.
Their main goal is not Navarre.
You touched on a couple good points there. One of them was there was a time when they were just trying to get growth of any kind, right? They were just, I remember hearing the stories of Bill Pullum, and he's just trying to get the bridge so that we can get a Publix, right? Because they need a grocery store, right? Setting up the water system. They were just happy to have a water system. I remember hearing the stories of just being happy that they had a waste, company, right, for trash. Yeah. There was a period of time where, there was nothing here, and there's people who wanted growth just so it could be a spot on the map and actually provide for the locals.
Right.
But now you hit this point where, like you said, because there's been no real management to it, it's just kind of been haphazard.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you have the opposite problem of like, we can't slow this thing down, right? And it's got crazy. So these pictures from the past are no longer reality, right?
And
it's not what you see.
it will never be reality.
Right.
Again, you can't go back.
Right.
Times are, like I say, are changing. You can't stop the change. We can grow, but we have to manage it.
Right. And I think we'll get into some of this too, I'm sure in future episodes of talking about redevelopment and how do you start to replant some trees, how do you start to have some museums, start to build back some of that culture that a lot of people don't know. Right? Because a lot of people have no idea, where Jaws 2 was filmed. They have no idea who some of these people, the heroes here from, from
We've
Hobart
had
Field that have come and gone.
here, the Native American Indians.
A lot of that history.
We have a history.
And so you can kind of reestablish some of that too, I think, as part of it as well.
Yeah.
Let's get into the growth. You talked about that, because this is where incorporation started to make sense for me, is when I started to look at this and do some of the research. When I look at what cities are doing, well, they have a city code. They have their own zoning. They have their own planning. Exactly. And some of them are going to use that to try to get more growth because they're nowhere. They're places on the map that you've never heard of. And they're trying to, hey, we need a grocery store. We need a restaurant. Yeah. But then there are cities that are using their city code effectively to be able to retain their culture. And that's what really started to sell me, is because I look at Gulf Breeze, and I've got the numbers here from Gulf Breeze in the past 20 years. And you get into Gulf Breeze, and you start to see a difference. You start to see how they're bringing some of that revenue home to be able to reinvest in their area to give their locals what they want. Burying their power lines, widening 98, right? Redoing their downtown with Triumph funds is a recent project that they put to work. And you see that. And a lot of people will say, oh, Gulf Breeze is built out. Well, that's just, the nature of things. It's not. It's not. Spend some time in Gulf Breeze and you'll see all the parks that they have. You'll see, like,
Yeah.
You know, all kinds of
They
areas
have
that
a
they
nice
protected.
park system
Absolutely.
in Gulf Breeze.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have some of those ordinances on, for instance, building heights,
Right.
then you're going to have developers come in, buy a certain building, tear it down, and build a tall office building.
Because that to me is where the city code comes into play. Is it says,
Yes.
okay, you want to build here. You want to establish a franchise here. Okay, cool. This is how you're going to do it. You're going to comply with our culture and our way of life. Yes, it could be a Buffalo Wild Wings. It can be a Wendy's. It can be a Starbucks. But you're going to have to submit that to our culture, and you're going to have to be part of this community.
Right.
When there's no city code, there's just the county code, right?
Right.
And they can do a lot more with that.
Yeah.
That, to me, is where I see the biggest difference in terms of why build here, why build there. It's cheap and it's easy to build in Navarre. Why wouldn't you?
Right.
Right? Like, there's no barriers at all.
restrictions,
Like,
whatever you want to build, just
exactly.
build it.
But then if you're going to build in Gulf Breeze, if you're going to build in Pensacola, Milton, Jay, all of a sudden now you're going to have to negotiate with the city government, and you're going to have to contribute a lot of times more infrastructure to the area than otherwise.
Yes, and that's
so it's asking
important.
them to be a part of the community that you're building
Right,
in.
right.
Yeah. So you see that growth rate, and it's not just Gulf Breeze, right? We put this together, and you can find these just from the census. You see this dynamic across the Panhandle,
Yeah.
right? You can see all these different unincorporated areas around us: Navarre, Holly, Midway, Pace. All of them kind of exploding because it's cheap and easy to build.
Exactly.
And we need houses, right? Like
Yeah.
you said it yourself. You found a house that you loved. I did too. We need houses, but we also need those to be built responsibly, and that's
Right.
what you see more in the incorporated areas.
Right.
And that gets down to your point of we've got to grow responsibly, right?
Right,
That's how
right.
you do it. And
We
that's
can
gonna be
build subdivisions with still leaving some trees,
right.
still leaving the wildlife
Yes.
around,
Yeah.
having sidewalks,
Right.
lights, so that the streets are not dark. The kids can play out a little bit longer
Right.
with your lights.
Right.
It's responsible building. That's what we need to
And
do.
then that's where redevelopment comes into play. Is a lot of times a business will come in and say, "Hey, we want to do this project, or we want to build this or that." You know, in the area. Okay, in order to do that, we're going to need you to correct some of the issues when it was built years ago that are wrong. Right?
Yeah.
Like, now we need you to build the sidewalks that didn't exist. Now you need the drainage system for the flooding.
Yes.
And you can use some of the plans to be able to go back and correct some of those areas.
Exactly.
You can also get public space, right? You can say, okay, we're going to build this, but the city government's going to have a piece of this to build our museum, you know, so that people will know, oh, I'm in Navarre, right? Or to pay tribute to the history and everything else that we've done.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so there's a lot of different options here that the city provides. What you don't see is that coming from the county, and I've had those discussions so many times. And I understand where they're coming from, because it's like they're thinking about the entire county.
Exactly.
It's like, oh gosh, all these people from Navarre complaining again. Then they've got the entire county to think about, and guess who's knocking on their door every day? It's the cities
Exactly.
who's saying, hey, we've got shovel-ready projects, and we're going to take your money and go do it. All right?
They have more clout.
Exactly. They're there full-time working on it. So it makes a lot of sense to me why this growth rate has been the way it has been.
Yeah.
So you talked about educating. You talked about how, you know, we need to get the facts out there. We need to spread. I pulled a clip right here from one of the videos. Remind me what you were talking about in this one. I think it was assessed values. Is that right? What was that about?
That was giving residents instructions on how they can calculate what their home taxes would be if we were a city.
Yeah.
You have to go to the web page where your tax records are, find your assessed
Right.
value.
Versus your market value.
Right.
Yeah,
Versus
absolutely.
the appraisal. Yeah, none of that. It's the assessed value. And multiply that by the number on that. It is the less than
Yeah.
1 mil for your tax.
Because that's the other part is you kind of mentioned, you know, in corporations' efforts in the past, taxes has always been, I think, the number one con to the whole incorporation piece of this, of like nobody wants to see their taxes raised. Nobody wants to have to pay more. The only way it makes sense is if it's an investment, if you're actually going to get something in return for
Which
that.
we will.
Right, exactly.
Which we will. Someone said, let me just pass on
Yeah,
this.
sure.
Someone on Facebook said, if you want, this may not be the exact words, but if you want a better apple,
Yeah.
or if I want a better apple, I'm willing to pay maybe a nickel more for that better apple than one that's just in the mixture of it so far.
I think what a lot of folks say is they say, well, I've seen so much waste from my current taxes that I pay that I don't want to pay anything more, right? That's the argument that I hear a lot. But that's the big part of incorporation that people miss,
Yeah.
is that a huge part of it is using money that you already pay
Right.
and bringing that home. So I mentioned franchises before. Having every business that wants to set up a franchise has to pay a fee for that. That goes to the county. With the city, that's staying home with us.
Right at the
It's
city.
money like that. Same thing with municipal sharing and a lot of other things. I'd love to see tourism stay here. A lot of different resources that we currently send to the county, to the state, would love to see those come back home. And that's a huge part, because every time I'm in a debate about incorporation, people always kind of have this assumption that my taxes are going to pay for all of it. And that's not the case. And that you can just look at Gulf Breeze, Milton, Jay, or any city, really.
Yeah.
I've seen very few where property taxes is their number one source
Yeah.
of income. It's always using other monies. And Gulf Breeze does this exceptionally well. And that's the stuff when you talk about educating, a big part of what you've done for me, and that is getting educated, and then me doing my own research as well, and having all those meetings and all that stuff to learn about how do you do this the right way, so that you're not having to skyrocket the taxes.
Right,
If you can pull from different resources that you currently pay, then you don't have to raise taxes as much.
We cannot afford to do nothing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, that's a lot of discussions that I've enjoyed having with you over this time. Let's look at some of the criticisms, because I mentioned that, and I want to be specific. So this was one debate I was having the other days. I was like, we got to put a hold on this for Christmas. And whoever this person was, I think it was like a fake profile or something, was wanting to argue with me. And I was like, well, we'll put a hold on it for Christmas. But then after that, I was like, okay, send me your comments and all that. So here was one, and it's kind of the ongoing stigma or narrative that they try to craft around you and around me. And so this person says, Wes, you and your Democratic cohort are trying to push your liberal agenda of adding another layer of government that isn't necessary and will cost a lot of money that our neighbors just do not have. Open your eyes. Our community is struggling to make ends meet, yet here you are trying to increase our cost. It's a clear-cut tax and spend liberal agenda. Take that back from where you came. I think that's a pretty concise view of their narrative. And I was like, I was happy to see it all in like one comment. Yeah, this person articulated the case on their side pretty well, because you see kind of like the take that back where you came, right? We don't want it here, so there's kind of a nativist aspect of it. You don't know this place. You don't know what it needs, right? And then you see them constantly saying it's liberal, it's a Democrat agenda, it's partisan, and then it's just trying to increase our cost. And you notice in here there's no description of any benefit of any kind. I've had numerous anti-incorporation people tell me we will get nothing for home rule, that it's not a benefit in itself. So I thought this was a pretty good description of where they stand. What's your reaction to that? How do you, because I've seen you kind of have debates before, but I'd love to get your live take on when you see that description of what you're talking about. What do you think?
I hardly know where to start.
Okay. Pick a spot.
Oh, goodness. First of all, incorporation is not a partisan action.
Yeah.
There are towns all over the country that are both Republican and Democrat. Being a town is not being liberal. Being a town is protecting your people, protecting yourself, protecting your property, your neighbors. The home rule is a benefit when we can make the decision here ourselves, rather than relying on 5 commissioners that don't even live here.
Right.
Actually, our one that's for our district, I think, lives in Holly. So he doesn't even live here either. They don't have the knowledge of our culture. They don't know, what we feel, what we want. There was, not to get on a specific item, but I've been to many commissioner meetings and spoke at many. And there was one item, some people had gathered a group together. They wanted to have a place somewhere on the beach to have dogs.
Yeah.
Went before the commissioners, and I swear to God, one of the commissioners, who I won't name, said that if they let dogs on the beach, people will bring their pigs.
Yeah.
Now, no.
Yeah, we're country, but we're not quite that country.
Yeah. So
I got some friends who have chickens, so they might bring their chickens.
Right, they might bring their chickens. It makes you just shake your head.
It's interesting because, so take that last point, because we're going to kind of get into all this, but take that back from where you came. How long did you say you've been here?
24
okay,
years.
Got it. So when you're talking about like local knowledge should inform local decisions,
I think
you've actually
got a lot now.
Yeah, you've got the standing to know what Navarre needs, right? That's who knows, is the locals, right? The
I've
people
been through a lot
that
of
have
it.
been here, right, and known. So the whole idea of you being an outsider, all that stuff, is just not true. And that's what I've noticed, is a lot of people who are on the anti-incorporation side are just on the train, right? And they assume that everybody who's pro just must have moved here. They just think you're all suckers, right? They don't think that you actually see a value in this. But the value you're talking about is particularly for locals.
Yes.
It is your right to have government that answers to you, right? It is
and
your
that's
right.
the smallest government.
Yeah.
When we are just our town.
Right,
That's
right.
the smallest government.
I remember we had a meeting with the town center folks who were wanting to plan the town center, and we had that locally. We had that over at St. Sylvester's Church rather than up at Milton. And you had like over 100 people show up because it's right down the street. You can actually make it there after work, right? Having those meetings locally, you're going to get a lot more citizens who can make it. Trying to make the zoning meetings and everything else up in Milton, it's a nightmare, especially coming from the local base, or if you have to travel to Pensacola trying to get over there, it's hours. And if you got kids, like, forget about it. But having something local, you can get a lot more participation. You're going to hear the citizens' voices a lot louder.
Exactly.
So it's that whole idea of you're an outsider trying to take over. No, I've met many people like you that are local who want this for the sake of having self-government.
Right.
Then the other part of it is, I think a lot of people have just kind of lost any faith in any type of representative government at all. They don't think it's possible for anybody to represent them, right? And so they don't see any value to having representation. But that's where I go back to the Constitution, and that's the American ideal, is having government not of kings and queens, but of elected representatives that we choose.
Right. And
Goes
our
back to that
city
choice.
council would be made up of people from each voting precinct.
Yeah.
And with maybe an extra one at the beach or...
But see, that's the argument right there, is who is choosing the county commissioners? All of the county is choosing the county commissioners.
Right, yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned Ray Eddington, who's our county commissioner, right? But everybody votes on Ray, right? And everybody's going to vote on whoever's next. Everybody votes on the county commissioners. Imagine a Navarre-only election where only Navarre is choosing that person.
Right.
And then they're sitting in the city council, and it's all locals, and it's all chosen by locals. And by that we mean Navarre citizens. So again, getting back to a truly representative government, representative of Navarre, not the entire county.
Exactly.
And we talked earlier about how different Navarre is than the rest of the county, right? So it kind of refutes several of those points. Let's go through a couple of other ones. All right. So we talked about, you mentioned partisan, and so did I.
The elephant in the room.
Yeah, and the donkey, right?
Yeah.
So I had no idea what your political party was when I met you. I just knew that you were someone who cared about your community, and you started talking about
I didn't know
birds
what you
and wildlife.
were either.
Yeah, same. But we connected on that basis. And I think that's the challenge for some people, is they're like, how is that possible? How can, if Wes is a Republican and, Nancy's a Democrat or independent, I don't know what you are now, but, Nancy's a different political party, how can they agree on anything? Because they see the entire world as partisan.
Just through that.
Right?
those
And there's a
glasses,
lot that is partisan. So I put together, you're going to love this. I put together this little thing of partisan things. There are plenty of partisan things, right? Especially in 2024. Political parties, right? Presidential candidates, we're going to have to vote on that. Political rallies. You and I could argue about, I'm sure, a whole bunch of issues like, affirmative action or abortion or, all kinds of other things, right? We could talk about foreign aid to Ukraine or this, that, and the other, or who do you think is the best congressperson, whatever. We could argue about those things because those tend to be partisan, right? And I think that's where people think, well, Preserve Navarre, too, is partisan. And a lot of these folks that when I've talked to them, it's almost like everything is partisan. Like you
Has
can't
to
shut
be
up.
partisan,
That's how I
right.
get someone on Christmas who's arguing with me, right? And it's just like he wants to talk about like Republicans and Democrats on Christmas, and I'm like, it's Jesus'
Do you
day.
ask people what party they are or what their political beliefs are when you're in church?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was this. You're gonna love this because I think about things where it's nonpartisan, right? And that's where we've gotten to. Is if you take a step back, you think about. Most of my life is like that. So I have partisan things. We'll talk politics and things like that from time to time. But then there's a huge part of life that everybody participates in to some degree that is nonpartisan. So I went with C's for whatever reason, but charities, right? There's a lot of charities. You mentioned several that you're a part of.
The Navarre Garden Club,
There might be a Republican in there, Nancy.
I know. Well, we don't ask.
Probably a few.
The Elks, the American Legion, the VFW, your churches,
You
the
mentioned
grocery
churches.
stores.
Churches is just another one. Is they allow Democrats as churches? I'm
Yeah,
told.
they do. Yeah.
Christmas. I already talked about Christmas is one. I mean, your grocery store, right? Like, you don't know. You don't know who's all
Who
like.
asked?
Right.
I never got the questions or the ridicule or the negativity before the last few years.
There's other nonprofits, the Chamber of Commerce, right?
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce
sure
is
they must have
nonprofit.
a
They've got a mix. Yeah, I couldn't tell you everybody's political party, and I've been to a ton of their events.
Yeah.
A big one I put on here is the military. The military is nonpartisan.
Exactly.
That for me is where I had the most experience in like a nonpartisan environment. Is I saw people of different political parties, and occasionally they tell me what they believe. I'm a libertarian this, I'm a Democrat that. We talk about that or so occasionally, but I would see these people of different parties contributing to the mission of protecting America, and I was like, okay, like, I may not agree with you on this, that, and the other, but we can defend the country together. Something as important as that, we can do it, right? And that's where I got to the point of, okay, I can be very partisan, I can share my beliefs on a whole list of issues, but I can also put a board on that and hold it back for a minute to work with people who may believe differently for a good cause, right?
And ultimately, one of my main beliefs is that discrimination itself is just plain wrong.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're purple with pink polka dots, or you came from Spain, or if you've been here 1 week. I don't care. You're a person, and I will treat you like I would like to be treated.
And so for me, I totally agree. And for me, that's where Preserve Navarre, when we were setting this up with the board, with Chuck and Mike and Jersey and all these people, that was the vision. Is the deciding factor is, do you love Navarre?
Right.
Because it's going to be resident focused. Going back to our first core value, do you love Navarre? Right. Okay? Yeah. Is you call this home? Do you believe in this place? That is the fundamental principle. We'll talk about partisan stuff. We might vote differently, once election time comes, especially in a partisan one. But getting back to the active incorporation of building a city, do you believe in Navarre? And I think back again to the Constitution and how people came from all kinds of different areas to say, we need an American government that represents all of us. It's the same thing with Navarre. Guarantee you're going to have a partisan election, and then I'll be running against you, Nancy, or somebody else will. not me, but I'll be voting for someone different than you. But the actual act of setting that election system up needs to be a bipartisan act.
Yes.
And so that's where I get the James Calkins and the other people who say, well, I only want Republicans in your club. I can't do it. I can't do it because it's a nonprofit. And even legally, I can't do it.
Well, the Constitution says that everyone is equal.
Yeah. That's a big part of it. That is in law in the form of the nonprofit that we built. Is you legally, churches can't discriminate on political party. They can't say, oh, you're a Republican, you can't come, or you're a Democrat, you can't come. There's legal protection there. And so even if I wanted to do it, I can't. So when I get these comments saying it's a liberal agenda or it's a bunch of Democrats, first of all, I couldn't kick Republicans out. I'd have to kick myself out first. But I couldn't kick Republicans out. I also can't sit there and say, oh, tell me your political party before you join. I legally can't do that. So going back to that comment of someone saying, oh, it's a liberal agenda and it's got to be a bunch of Democrats, it's illegal for me to discriminate on political party, first of all, one way or the other. Right. And then secondly, that's not what the group is about. It's not about pushing some type of agenda that is rooted in partisanship. It is pushing an agenda that is rooted in self-government, right?
Yes,
which is bipartisan.
Exactly.
So same kind of thing here. See what else I got here on the whole thing. Oh, there was another comment. Someone said, oh, you're a social welfare organization, because I guess they Googled what a 501c4 is, and they were like, oh, you guys are a social welfare organization. No, we're a nonprofit, and we advocate for these issues. And I guess what they were thinking is social welfare could be like a buzz term that would that liberals like and conservatives hate. I think that's where they were going with it. That's just the name of what the nonprofit is. And I put up the NRA because there's plenty of nonprofits that are clearly not of any type of ideological bent that is aligned with liberalism that are 501c4s as well. So if you want to tell me that NRA is a social welfare organization, you're going to attack them, that's fine. But the idea that that's part of it or that it's liberal by nature is just not true. So there's a lot of those criticisms that people have that are against the incorporation movement, that goes back to that education piece that you were saying. Of they just, if someone doesn't know what a 501c4 is, it's a tax term, right? If someone hasn't thought about, oh, okay, like the incorporation movement does have value, that representative government can have value, if they haven't taken the time to look at what's happening around them, and to think about the factors why, if they don't know how a city code works, and someone comes along and just tells you, oh, yeah, this is a liberal agenda, it's a bunch of Democrats, and they've never met you or me, then they might believe it. And that's where that education piece comes into play.
Exactly.
So I appreciate it. Like I said, I kind of my own beliefs, and, as we're starting to run a little bit low on time, but I think this is important. As I mentioned, how do I compartmentalize my own beliefs? I have them, right? I've worked for Republican politicians off and on and volunteered since I was a kid. Going back to when I was 12 years old, 13 years old, I was volunteering for my state rep. And I definitely have partisan beliefs. That's always been a part of it. But going into the military, I learned how to put that barrier up, right? And I learned how to say, okay, this is part of my life, but it's not going to encroach on my career. And when I take time off from orders, I can do that. I jumped in and helped out with the DeSantis campaign for a few weeks when I was off orders and I get to express my partisanship. That's great. But I also learned how to hold it back when necessary.
Right.
And that's an important thing. So what I get into, what I believe, I think about limited government. And that, to me, is true conservatism. That's the partisan nature of what I'm thinking of. What makes me a Republican is I believe the government should be limited so that it can be preserved, so that it can be utilized effectively. When it's not limited, that's when I start to get frustrated. And that's what I see a lot of times from the county is they have this huge area, they have, this big budget, they have all these people they have to take care of, and it doesn't seem very focused and limited at all. And so that's where the incorporation effort, it sets up a competing power, like the difference between the executive branch and the legislative branch.
Right.
Now you've got competing powers, and now the city's going to be calling up the county every day. Hey, you're not taking care of Navarre. You're not taking care of Navarre.
Yeah.
You need to give us more of our money back. You need to give us more of our money back. Hiring full-time employees to hold them accountable is part of that founding ideal of federalism that I believe in.
Right.
So by creating that, all of a sudden you're marshaling resources to bring more home. That's where the limited nature. So that's me. That's my conservatism coming out, but it's definitely there. And I know you got your reasons. You've talked about them a lot today about why you believe in it, and I appreciate you being on here. This is a quote that I thought you might like that hopefully kind of sums it up for a little bit of both of us. Just thinking about how to express it, and talking to you before the show, I kind of came out of there is value in partisanship, meaning there's a reason we have political parties. There's a reason we have partisan divides in our country, but not everything of value is partisan.
Exactly.
Meaning, we've talked about this: the grocery store, the church, the military, incorporation.
Social
There's
clubs.
things of value that are not partisan, and that's where that line ends. So that to me kind of sums up my beliefs, and I was wondering if it shared it was shareable with you as well in terms of what you believe. Yeah. Cool. All right. So let's look at a couple comments here. We got about 5 or 6 minutes before we're going to wrap up. So looking at this, Robert Berto, and I'll just kind of drag these on here live and we can take a look. So here we go. Or Roberto, sorry. Ro says, I'm afraid a local government would end up being a good old boys club. This is a really good comment, Ro. I really appreciate it. I've got a whole bunch of thoughts. I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, well...
Because I got thoughts.
First of all, let me just say that we, as much as we are passionate about becoming a city, we are not going to run the city.
Yeah.
There will be elections, and you will choose your neighbors or whoever is running that is a resident here. And one thing that we would like to do after elections, during the running of our city, is to keep an eye on those people that are in those jobs, to try to make sure that there is no corruption.
No, that's it.
And the city charter has some very good checks and balances in there.
Yes, and putting that into practice. So I love this comment, and you said it really, really well. This was one of the reasons why I felt like we needed a long-term effort like you talked about, and to get involved in a lot of other things besides just incorporation. It's fine if we believe that's a good thing for the future. We need to prove to the folks who we are, that we care, that we love this place, and not just say it, not just talk, but actually act and do that. This is how I started getting involved in the water system, right? Is I started learning from business owners small business owners, local folks as well, who would say exactly what Roe was saying, is that I'm afraid you create this West and it's going to be out of control. It's going to be this monstrosity that doesn't have any value, and these good old boys get in there, meaning people that are corrupt and just taking money for themselves, and now it sucks. Now it's just terrible, and I hate it, and it was a waste, right? It's very good thought, very good criticism. We need to think about that. And I was like, we need to challenge the old boys club early and often and let them know we need business. We need to be able to show that we can take on corruption.
Right.
Enter Dallas PV in the water system, because that's what people kept telling me.
Yeah.
I was like, so what is it? I would hear this comment a couple of years ago. What do they mean by the good old boys club? What is that for real? And they would say, oh my gosh, the water system. You got to look at the water system, because that's been a whole bunch of corruption in terms of its management. Right. I was like, really? Let's look into it. We look into it. Sure enough, the CEO is an international criminal, con man who's skimming all kinds of money, doing contracts, right, without any bids, doing it without the board's approval, hundreds of thousands, no oversight. And then I start asking employees, and they say, absolutely, it's a mess over there, right? And so we took that CEO on, we outed his history, provided that to the media, and then held the board accountable, and they kicked him out. Right. And so we fired a shot across the bow to the old boys club, if you will, Roe, to say, listen, preservative art means business. Yes, we want to be here to help charities. We want to be here to help locals. We want to be resident focused. But sometimes the residents need to be defended when their money's being stolen for purposes that aren't what it was given for.
Right.
And that's where we took that challenge. So, Ro, that's something that I want to be a part of. Nancy wants to be a part of. Our group wants to be a part of as a watchdog to make sure that our community is taken care of. And the same thing with the city, as we want to be involved in this going forward. So if you're concerned about that and you want to be part of the answer, join. Jump in, because we're all about that. And we're not waiting for a city to happen before we start standing up for what's right. We've been doing that from the beginning.
Right.
So love that comment. Really appreciate it, Ro. It's definitely near and dear to my heart. Allison, we got one more. So let me drag this on here. Okay. I think she was kind of responding to Rose as well. She said, that is a valid fear. I feel like closer to home, we can get faster results and have more control of our area, and oust someone faster and easier should it come to that. Over 20 years here, and I am ready to embrace it. Proud Republican here. Allison's comment makes me think about Benjamin Franklin. It was like when they made the Constitution, the people asked Benjamin Franklin, what have you given us? And he said, a republic if you can keep it, right? Meaning the most important part of this is you. It will only continue to exist if the people keep it. And so at the end of the day, the best answer to this is mobilizing citizens and getting them involved to care.
Yes.
Right? That's the founding value of our group, is we have to be the type of people that can mobilize folks and say, here's what's going on in your area. You have to care. And for that, we need a dedicated team of people who do care.
Right.
And that's again, what we agree on. There's the nonpartisan thing coming out is, regardless of what party you're from, love of your community can span anyone. If we can agree on that, we can build a team that can preserve and advocate for our needs. Right. So my last comment here, and then I'll turn it over to you, Nancy, to close this out, is I hear from anti-incorporation people all the time who seem to want the same things that you've talked about today and that I want. They seem to want slower, more responsible growth. They seem to want the history of Navarre preserved. They seem to want some more infrastructure. They seem to want better ethics from their government officials. It's like we agree on 90% of things.
Yeah.
It's when you get down to the methodology for getting after it. What method are you going to use to get it? That's where the disagreement comes. I want all this stuff, but I don't want to pay anything for it, right? Like I want to have local zoning and planning.
That's not life.
Yeah, I want to have all of these things. I want to see more of our history come back. I want to see redevelopment. I want to see, a Navarre History Museum. I want to see more infrastructure to prepare for the next hurricane. I want to see all these things. And then they think you can walk up there to the county and ask for it, right? It's not going to happen. And it's not because the county's terrible people. It's because they have an entire county to provide for. And there's there's not that focus.
Yes.
Right? So to me, I think we're not as far apart as people think, whether you're pro or anti. You can find some common ground if that conversation, that dialogue takes place. And we've seen some of that tonight. So that's where I'm at. What do you got? We got about a minute left. So anything else? I'm so grateful you took the time. And it's fun
I
to hang out.
enjoyed
It's
it.
always fun to hang out with you.
It is. Yeah, thank you. I guess I would just recommend to anybody, if you have any questions, we have an email and I think even a phone number on our webpage. If you have specific questions, get back with us. We will try to answer them. Join our group.
Yeah.
We need more people. Actually, we need more money.
Absolutely.
Too.
What I would love to see, I'm sorry to cut you off. What I would love to see is a vote going forward. And that's,
we need
anyway,
to do
keep going,
that
sorry.
ASAP.
Yeah.
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 But and all of that is just not free either. And so, even if you could donate $20, $10, $50, everybody together, we can do this together.
Yeah, it goes into that nonprofit. All of us have either full-time jobs or we're retired, so it goes straight to those costs. And I would love to see that vote. Maybe we'll do another show on that. So
yeah,
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here, Nancy, and all the great contributions.
Yeah.
Love you and what you've done for Navarre. I'm so glad that you called this place home. And looking forward to what the future brings for it.
Yep.
So, all right.
Me too.
Thank y'all. So, like Nancy said, take a look at the website, preservenavarre.com. Preservenavarre@gmail.com is the email. You can reach out anytime. We're happy to talk with you there. But we've also got, obviously, social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. So thanks again for watching the show, and we'll see you next Thursday.
Okay. Bye-bye.